Just when Jonah tried to run from God's voice, a mighty storm shook the sea, and fear gripped every heart on the ship. In the middle of the chaos, Jonah made a choice so shocking it left everyone speechless. Thrown into the deep, dark ocean, it looked like the end, but it was only the beginning. What happened next is something no one could ever imagine. Don't miss the rest of this powerful story. Like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss a single moment. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a man named Jonah. He was a prophet, which means he was someone special who could hear God's voice and share God's messages with other people. Jonah had curly hair that danced in the wind, kind eyes that sparkled like stars, and a heart that usually wanted to do the right thing. Every morning, Jonah would thank God for another wonderful day. He would eat his breakfast while listening carefully for God's voice. Sometimes God would ask him to visit nearby towns to share important messages. Jonah always said, "Yes, God," and would pack his little bag with water and food for the journey. But one bright, sunny morning, something very different happened. As Jonah sat on his roof watching the fluffy white clouds drift across the blue sky, he heard God's voice calling to him more clearly than ever before. "Jonah, my faithful servant," God's voice rumbled like gentle thunder, "I have a very important job for you today." Jonah's heart began to beat a little faster with excitement. "Yes, Lord. What would you like me to do?" "I want you to get up right now and go to the great city of Nineveh," God said. "The people there are doing terrible things. They are hurting each other, stealing, lying, and being very mean. I want you to walk through their streets and tell them that if they don't stop their bad behavior, their city will be destroyed in 40 days. Suddenly, Jonah's excitement turned into fear. His hands started shaking, and his stomach felt like it was full of butterflies doing somersaults. Nineveh! That was the most frightening city in the whole world. It was the capital of Assyria, where the strongest, meanest warriors lived. These were the people who had hurt many of Jonah's friends and neighbors. They were enemies of his people. "But God," Jonah whispered, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind, "those people in Nineveh are so scary. They might hurt me or even kill me if I tell them they're doing bad things. Can't you send someone else? Someone braver than me?" But God was quiet. Jonah waited and waited, hoping God would change his mind, but no other words came. Fear filled Jonah's heart like water filling a cup. Instead of trusting God to protect him, Jonah made a terrible decision. He decided to run away. "If I go far enough in the opposite direction," Jonah thought to himself, "maybe God won't be able to find me there, and he'll have to choose someone else for this scary job." Jonah quickly packed his clothes, grabbed all his money, and hurried down the dusty road toward Joppa, a busy port city by the Great Sea. His sandals went slap, slap, slap against the ground as he walked as fast as his legs could carry him. The sun was getting hotter, and sweat dripped down his face, but he didn't stop. All he could think about was getting away from God's scary assignment. When Jonah reached Joppa, the salty smell of the sea filled his nose. The port was buzzing with activity. Fishermen were bringing in their nets full of silver fish that sparkled in the sunlight. Merchants were loading and unloading big ships with goods from faraway lands, colorful spices, soft fabrics, and shiny pottery. Seagulls were flying overhead, crying "tit-caw" as they looked for scraps of food. Jonah walked up and down the docks, looking at all the ships. Finally, he found a large wooden vessel with tall sails. The captain was a friendly man with a big beard and weathered hands from years of sailing. "Where is this ship going?" Jonah asked, trying to sound casual. "To Tarshish," the captain replied with a smile. "It's far, far away across the Great Sea, about as far as you can go in the opposite direction from here." Perfect, Jonah thought. That was exactly what he wanted, to go as far away from Nineveh as possible. "How much does it cost to sail with you?" Jonah asked. The captain told him the price, and Jonah quickly paid all the money he had. It was expensive, but he didn't care. All he wanted was to escape from God's command. As the ship pulled away from the dock, Jonah felt relieved. The other passengers were friendly traders and travelers. The sailors sang happy songs as they worked with the ropes and sails. The ship rocked gently on the waves like a baby being rocked to sleep. Jonah went down to the lower part of the ship, found a quiet corner with some soft blankets, and lay down for a nap. Finally, Jonah sighed as he closed his eyes. "I'm safe now. God will never find me here." But as Jonah drifted off to sleep, he didn't notice that the sky was beginning to change. The beautiful blue was slowly turning gray, and the gentle white clouds were becoming dark and angry. The peaceful waves were starting to grow bigger and more restless. God, who sees everything and is everywhere, looked down at his runaway prophet with sadness. He loved Jonah very much, but he couldn't let him disobey such an important command. The people of Nineveh needed to hear God's warning so they could change their ways and be saved. Suddenly, the Lord sent a great wind onto the sea. It wasn't like any ordinary storm. This was a supernatural tempest sent specifically to get Jonah's attention. The wind howled like 1,000 wolves, and the waves grew taller than houses, crashing over the ship with tremendous force. Whoosh! Crash! Boom! The sounds were terrifying. The ship was tossed around like a toy boat in a bathtub. All the sailors woke up in panic, their eyes wide with fear. They had sailed through many storms before, but nothing like this. The experienced captain, who had been sailing for 30 years, had never seen waves so big or winds so fierce. "This is no ordinary storm," the sailors shouted to each other. "Someone must have made the gods very angry." While all this chaos was happening above, Jonah was still fast asleep below deck, snoring peacefully despite the violent rocking of the ship. He was so tired from his long journey and so relieved to be escaping that not even this supernatural storm could wake him up. The terrified sailors began crying out to all their different gods. "Save us," they prayed. "Please don't let us die." But the storm only got worse. The ship was taking on water, and they were all afraid they would sink to the bottom of the sea. Finally, the desperate captain stumbled down to where Jonah was sleeping. Water was splashing everywhere, and the ship was tilting dangerously from side to side. "Wake up," the captain shouted, shaking Jonah by the shoulders. "How can you sleep at a time like this? Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will have mercy on us and save our lives." Jonah woke up confused and dizzy. The ship was rocking so violently that he could barely stand up. As he climbed up to the deck and saw the massive waves and heard the screaming wind, his heart sank. Deep down inside, he knew exactly why this storm was happening. This wasn't just any storm, this was God's storm, and it was all his fault for running away. The storm was getting worse by the minute. The waves were now as tall as mountains, crashing over the ship with such force that everyone was sure they would all die. The wooden vessel creaked and groaned under the pressure, as if it might break apart at any moment. Lightning flashed across the dark sky like angry fingers, and thunder boomed so loudly it hurt their ears. The sailors were experienced men who had sailed through many dangerous storms, but they had never seen anything like this. Their faces were pale with fear, and their hands shook as they held onto the ropes and masts to keep from being thrown overboard. "This is not a natural storm," shouted the first mate, a wise old sailor with silver hair. "Someone on this ship must have done something terrible to anger the gods." The captain nodded grimly. "We must find out who has brought this curse upon us, or we will all perish in these waters." In those days, when people couldn't figure out an answer to something important, they would cast lots, which was like drawing straws or flipping coins, to let their gods decide. The sailors quickly gathered some small stones and pieces of wood, each marked with different symbols. "Whoever draws the marked stone is the one who has brought this disaster upon us," the captain announced. One by one, each person on the ship drew from the bag. The regular passengers drew blank stones. The sailors drew blank stones. Finally, it was Jonah's turn. With trembling hands, he reached into the bag and pulled out the marked stone. All eyes turned to stare at Jonah. Even in the middle of the howling storm, there was a moment of shocked silence. "You," gasped the captain. "Tell us, who are you? What have you done? Where do you come from? What is your job?" Jonah's shoulders slumped in defeat. There was no point in hiding the truth anymore. The storm was proof that you cannot run away from God. "I am a Hebrew," Jonah said sadly, having to shout over the roaring wind. "I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. I am running away from him because he asked me to do something that scared me." When the sailors heard this, they became even more frightened. They knew about the Hebrew God, the one true God who had power over everything. If Jonah was running from such a mighty God, no wonder this supernatural storm had come upon them. "What have you done?" they cried. "How could you run away from the God who made the sea and the sky?" The waves crashed over them again, soaking everyone with cold, salty water. The ship tilted so far to one side that barrels and ropes went sliding across the deck. "What can we do to make the storm stop?" the sailors asked desperately. Jonah looked around at all the frightened faces, good men who didn't deserve to die because of his disobedience. His heart was heavy with guilt and sorrow. He knew there was only one way to save them. "You must pick me up and throw me into the sea," Jonah said quietly. "Then the storm will stop and you will be safe. I know this terrible tempest is all my fault for running away from the Lord." "No," cried the sailors. "We cannot throw you overboard. That would be murder." These were good men with kind hearts. Even though they were terrified and even though Jonah had brought this disaster upon them, they didn't want to hurt him. Instead, they grabbed their oars and tried to row the ship back to land. They worked harder than they had ever worked before, pulling with all their strength against the mighty waves. But it was no use. The storm only grew fiercer. The waves grew taller, the wind grew stronger, and the lightning grew brighter. Water was pouring into the ship faster than they could bail it out. "Please," Jonah shouted over the storm. "You must throw me into the sea or we will all die. This is the only way." Finally, the sailors realized they had no choice. But before they did anything, these good men prayed to Jonah's God. "O Lord," they cried, "please do not let us die for throwing this man into the sea. We don't want to kill an innocent person, but we have no choice. You are the Lord, and you do whatever you think is right." Then with heavy hearts, the sailors picked up Jonah. He was heavy, and it took several men to lift him. Jonah closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. "Lord, I'm sorry I ran away from you. Please forgive me." 3. And they threw Jonah over the side of the ship into the raging sea. Flash. The moment Jonah hit the water, the most amazing thing happened. Instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch, the storm stopped. The howling wind became a gentle breeze. The mountain-high waves became small, peaceful ripples. The dark clouds rolled away, and the sun came out, making the water sparkle like diamonds. The sailors stood on the deck with their mouths wide open in amazement. They had never seen anything so incredible. The sea was now as calm as a mirror, and birds were singing in the distance. "The Hebrew God is the true God," they whispered in awe. "He has power over the wind and the waves." Right there on the ship, these sailors began to worship Jonah's God, offering sacrifices and making promises to serve him. But what about Jonah? He was sinking down, down, down into the deep blue sea. The water was cold and dark. Seaweed wrapped around his arms and legs like green ribbons. Fish swam past him, their scales glittering in the dim light that filtered down from above. He couldn't breathe, and he thought he was going to die. This is the end, Jonah thought as he sank deeper and deeper. I will never see the sunshine again or feel the warm sand beneath my feet. But God, who loved Jonah even when he was disobedient, had not forgotten about him. The Lord had prepared something very special, something that had never happened before and would never happen again. From the deepest part of the ocean, where the water was black as night, came swimming the most enormous fish anyone could imagine. This wasn't an ordinary fish. This was a special creature that God had made just for this moment. It was bigger than a house, bigger than a ship, bigger than anything Jonah had ever seen. Its eyes were kind and gentle, and it moved through the water with graceful, powerful strokes. The great fish swam up from the ocean depths. Its huge mouth opened wide, so wide that Jonah could have walked inside standing up. And then, gulp. The fish swallowed Jonah in one giant swallow, just like you might swallow a grape. Instead of being crushed or hurt, Jonah found himself in the most unusual place, inside the fish's belly. It was dark and warm and wet, and the walls around him moved gently as the fish breathed. He could hear the fish's giant heart beating like a drum. Thump, 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 thump. The sound was actually comforting, reminding him that he was alive and safe. For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah lived inside the great fish. He had time to think about everything that had happened. He thought about how he had disobeyed God, how he had put innocent people in danger, and how God had still saved his life even though he didn't deserve it. As the fish swam through the deep ocean waters, Jonah prayed like he had never prayed before. His voice echoed in the fish's belly as he spoke to God. Lord, when I was in trouble, I called to you, and you answered me. From deep in the grave, I cried for help, and you heard my voice. You threw me into the deep waters, right into the heart of the seas, and the currents swirled around me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. But you brought me up from the pit, O Lord my God. When my life was slipping away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer came to you. I will sacrifice to you with songs of thanksgiving, and I will keep the promises I make to you. Salvation comes from the Lord. God heard Jonah's prayer and saw that his heart had truly changed. Jonah was no longer running away, he was ready to obey. After 3 incredible days and nights inside the great fish, God spoke to his special sea creature. The fish, who had been swimming through the deep ocean waters carrying Jonah safely in its belly, now received a new command from the Lord. The enormous fish began swimming upward, toward the light, toward the surface of the sea. Up it swam, past schools of colorful fish, past coral reefs, past dancing jellyfish, until finally it reached the top where the sunlight danced on the waves. The fish swam toward the shore, where golden sand met the sparkling blue water. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and seashells dotted the beach like tiny treasures. When the fish reached the shallow water where the waves lapped softly against the sand, it opened its huge mouth and burped. Out came Jonah, tumbling onto the warm, soft sand. He was covered from head to toe in fish slime that smelled terrible, and pieces of seaweed were tangled in his hair like green spaghetti. His clothes were soggy and torn, and he looked like the most unusual sight anyone had ever seen. But he was alive, breathing fresh air, and feeling the wonderful warmth of sunshine on his face. Jonah sat on the beach for a moment, blinking in the bright light and coughing up seawater. He looked out at the ocean where the great fish was already swimming away, its massive tail waving goodbye as it disappeared into the deep blue waters. "Thank you, God," Jonah whispered, tears of gratitude streaming down his cheeks. "Thank you for saving my life when I didn't deserve it." As Jonah was washing the fish slime off himself in a freshwater stream nearby, he heard the familiar voice of the Lord speaking to him again. "Jonah, get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Give them the message I told you to give them." This time, Jonah didn't hesitate for even a second. "Yes, Lord," he said immediately. "I will go right now." Jonah found some clean clothes from a kind merchant, ate some food to regain his strength, and began the long journey to Nineveh. As he walked day after day through dusty roads, over hills, and across rivers, he thought about what he would say to the people. He was still nervous, but now he trusted that God would protect him and give him the right words to speak. After many days of traveling, Jonah finally saw Nineveh in the distance. His mouth dropped open in amazement. The city was absolutely enormous, much bigger than he had imagined. It had massive walls that reached toward the sky, with towers and gates that looked like they were built for giants. The city was so huge that it would take 3 whole days just to walk from one side to the other. As Jonah approached the city gates, he could see thousands and thousands of people. There were merchants selling goods in colorful markets, children playing in the streets, women carrying water jugs on their heads, and men working at various trades. The city buzzed with activity like a giant beehive. Taking a deep breath and saying a silent prayer for courage, Jonah entered through the massive city gates. He walked into the busy streets where people were hurrying about their daily business, and then he began to shout in a loud, clear voice. "Listen, everyone. Listen to the message from the Lord God of heaven. In 40 days, Nineveh will be destroyed. In 40 days, this great city will be turned upside down because of all the evil things you are doing." The people stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at this strange man with a powerful voice. Word spread quickly through the streets. "There's a prophet here. He says our city will be destroyed in 40 days. Instead of getting angry or laughing at Jonah, something miraculous began to happen. The people believed his message. They could tell by the way he spoke and the power in his voice that he was telling the truth. "We have been doing terrible things," they said to each other. "We have been hurting people, stealing, lying, and being cruel. Maybe God really will destroy our city unless we change." From the richest person to the poorest person, from the oldest grandparent to the youngest child, everyone in Nineveh began to feel sorry for their bad behavior. They took off their beautiful clothes and put on rough, scratchy sackcloth to show how sad and sorry they were. They stopped eating food and spent their time praying and asking God to forgive them. The amazing news reached the palace where the king of Nineveh lived. When the king heard Jonah's message, he immediately stood up from his golden throne. He took off his beautiful royal robes, his shining crown, and all his jewelry. Then he put on scratchy sackcloth just like his people and sat down in ashes to show how sorry he was. The king made an official announcement that was read aloud throughout the entire city. By order of the king and his nobles, no person or animal, no herd or flock, may eat or drink anything. Everyone must put on sackcloth and pray to God with all their heart. Everyone must stop doing evil things and stop hurting other people. Let everyone turn away from their bad behavior. Who knows? Maybe God will change his mind and not destroy us. Maybe he will stop being angry with us and we won't die. It was the most incredible sight anyone had ever seen. The entire city of Nineveh, hundreds of thousands of people, all wearing sackcloth, all praying, all asking God for forgiveness. Even the animals wore sackcloth. The cows, sheep, goats, camels, and donkeys all had rough cloth tied around them. The whole city fasted together, and you could hear the sound of people praying and crying out to God from every street and every house. Children who had been mean to other children said, "I'm sorry," and shared their toys. Merchants who had been cheating their customers gave back the money they had stolen. Rich people who had been selfish began giving food and help to poor families. Soldiers who had been cruel became gentle and kind. God looked down from heaven and saw all of this. He saw that the people of Nineveh really meant it when they said they were sorry. He could see into their hearts and knew they truly wanted to change and do good things instead of bad things. Because God is loving and merciful, he decided not to destroy the city after all. The 40 days came and went, but Nineveh was still standing. The people had been forgiven. God's love and mercy had saved them all. But when Jonah saw that God had spared the city, he became upset. He went outside the city walls and sat down under the hot sun, feeling angry and confused. "Lord," Jonah complained, "this is exactly what I was afraid would happen. I knew that you are kind and loving, slow to get angry, and full of mercy. I knew you would forgive them if they said they were sorry. That's why I tried to run away to Tarshish in the first place." God asked Jonah gently, "Is it right for you to be angry about this?" Jonah didn't answer. He was still pouting like a child who didn't get his way. To shade himself from the burning sun, Jonah built a little shelter, but it wasn't very good at keeping him cool. Then God made a special plant grow up overnight right next to Jonah's shelter. It was a beautiful vine with big, broad leaves that gave wonderful shade. Jonah was so happy about the plant. It made him feel much more comfortable in the heat. But the next morning, God sent a little worm to eat the vine, and it died. Then God sent a hot, scorching wind from the east. The sun beat down on Jonah's head until he felt faint and sick. "I wish I could die." Jonah groaned. "This heat is unbearable." Then God said to Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the plant dying?" "Yes." Jonah replied, "I'm angry enough to die." But God said, "Jonah, you cared about that plant, even though you didn't make it grow and it only lasted one day. So shouldn't I care about the great city of Nineveh, which has more than 120,000 people who don't know the difference between right and wrong, plus all their animals?" Suddenly Jonah understood. God loved all people, not just the people who were easy to love, but even the people who seemed scary or mean. God wanted everyone to have a chance to say they were sorry and change their ways. The people of Nineveh weren't God's enemies. They were his children too, and he loved them just as much as he loved Jonah. Jonah realized that God's love is bigger than we can imagine. From that day on, Jonah never forgot the lesson he learned. He understood that being God's messenger meant sharing God's love with everyone, even the people who seemed the most unlovable. And the great city of Nineveh became a place where people tried to be kind, helpful, and good to one another, all because one man named Jonah finally obeyed God and shared his message of hope and forgiveness. What an incredible journey, proof that no one can outrun God's love and purpose. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next powerful Bible adventure.